noise and confusion of battle, communications were vital. One solution was the use of message arrows.
Signal arrows could be used to send messages to your own troops. Faster than a man, faster than a horse.
It was the quickest way to communicate in the heat of battle. Whistling arrows were blunt, and most importantly, they announced their arrival. But they weren't just used to pass written messages. When shot in a volley, whistling arrows could be loud enough to signal to a small group of warriors, telling them both where and when to attack. On hearing the sound, they would gallop in and strike where the arrows landed. However, a much louder sound was required to sound the retreat or to communicate to the whole army. That was the job of the war drums.
The Mongols also used gongs, and the combinations of drums and gongs gave the Mongols a wide array of signaling options.
We do not know the exact rhythms they used, but basic commands could be conveyed with different percussive patterns. They enabled the Mongols to communicate with their own forces and strike fear into the enemy. They were the heartbeat of the Mongol army. The Mongol Empire was one of the largest the world had ever known. This couldn't have been achieved without the hardiness and endurance of the Mongol horse. The Mongol horse was the Empire's main mode of transport. From the extreme heat of the Gobi Desert to the harsh sub-zero temperatures of Eastern Europe, it had to be adaptable to any type of condition. Professor Del Jaborgin is an expert on this breed.
The Mongolian steppe is very cold in winter and very hot in summer. So Mongolian horse has very thick coat and long hair and very hard hoofs.
Left untrimmed and unshod, their hooves are perfect for crossing all types of terrain. And by feeding themselves on what was naturally available from the land, the army was freed from carrying additional fodder on campaign.
In winter, it can pour off the snow and eat the grass underneath.
But it wasn't just their versatility that made them invaluable. It was also their ability to travel great distances quickly, made possible by a unique fifth gait. The fifth gait is an energy-efficient pace that enables the Mongol horse to travel at a steady speed for long periods of time. And the running style is almost bounce-free, meaning a warrior could endure longer rides and even sleep whilst on the move. Today's Mongolian crossbreeds still have this ability. But like any horse, carrying a person at speed couldn't be kept up indefinitely. This meant that before the horse became tired, the rider could switch to a fresh one.
When they train the horse, they just change it on the move from one saddle to another saddle.
By repeatedly switching horses, a mounted warrior could travel vast distances much faster than conventional armies. With their speed, adaptability, and endurance, the Mongol horse was the engine that drove the Mongol army to victory. The Mongols were famed for their archers, and at the heart of their success was the clever engineering of the Mongol Bow. The Mongol bow was part of a family of bows. Different cultures made these in varying shapes, but they were all made of the same materials. They were all composite bows, assembled from several parts. Lucas Novotny is a world-class horse archer and a master composite bow maker.
Here we have a wooden core. That's what we begin with. The core is basically the invisible part of the bow. All we see in a bow is always the flesh. However, we never see the skeleton. Just like in a human, we know it's there.
The wooden parts are fitted together with precision joints, giving the bow its distinctive shape.
Okay. Now, we have the tips. They go in like so.
These tips of the bow are non-bending. They act as levers that allow you to draw a much stronger bow than you normally would be able to. It's a genius bit of engineering.
The next stage in assembling the composite materials is to laminate the wooden core with strips of horn. A tool called a tendiek ensures that even pressure is applied to the glued surfaces.
That's a lot of pressure. I have to work to really kind of keep this in place.
Horn resists compression and stores energy. It is the muscles of the bow. The bowmaker then applies the sinew. This is dried animal tendons that have been pounded and shredded to produce fine fibers of considerable tensile strength. Bundles of combed sinew are moistened with water, then soaked in glue made from the swim bladders of fish. The sinew is applied carefully, layer by layer. One medieval text states that all of the skill lies in the laying of the sinew.
You have to really be quick with your hands. You have to make sure the fibers are straight.
Keeping the sinew straight is essential. If the limbs are not perfectly true, the bow risks twisting in action.
A finished Mongol bow is usually covered with leather or birch bark to protect it from the elements. But the horn is exposed. That is where the power is.
In the hands of highly skilled mobile horse archers, the Mongol bow became one of the most legendary weapons in history. The vast Mongol Empire was created by warfare, but it was governed by bureaucracy. Good communications across the empire were vital, and that was the job of the Yam riders. The Yam was an incredibly well-organized postal system, introduced by Genghis Khan over 800 years ago. It consisted of a network of relay stations, linked by high-speed riders.
These riders were so fast, they were known as the arrow messengers. You know, they rode at such a bruising pace that they would have to use these cloths to support their abdomen, their spine, and their internal organs.
Yam messengers wore a sash of bells, so they could be heard approaching from a distance. With this advance warning, a fresh relay horse could be ready as soon as they arrived.
Remounting like this allows us to travel several relays each day.
With a constant stream of riders, official messages could be carried quickly to and from all corners of the empire. In China alone, the Yam had over 14,000 relay depots and over 50,000 horses. In some areas, the relay stations were much closer together. Here, the system also used fast runners. However, it was the hard-riding couriers that made the Yam such a rapid communications web. And to ensure it ran smoothly, riders carried a medallion, the paisa. Paisas acted as passports and gave the owner authority to demand goods and services from the Yam stations and the local population. The Yam messengers were the lifeblood that flowed through the great Mongol Empire. Nomads followed their flocks and herds. A Mongol family might move up to 30 times a year to seek fresh grazing.
Nomadic people civilization is different from the settled civilization. It's based on open field movement and horseback riding lifestyle. The music is one of the most important elements of this kind of way of life.
A central theme in Mongolian music is the horse.
All Mongol life was lived on horses. That's part of the Mongol identity, is the music of the horse.
The most iconic Mongolian instrument was the morin kor.
Morin Khor in a Mongolian language, it's mean horse head fiddle.
The strings came from a horse's tail. 120 hairs for the top, female string, and 150 for the bottom, male string. Everything to do with the morin kor related to horses. And it could even imitate their sounds. A distinctive aspect of Mongolian music is throat singing.
Throat singing is an ancient way of singing that imitates the echo from the nature.
Throat singing is the sound of the steppe, the wind, the earth, the animals. Music was also used to tell stories. In this praise song, two horses run away from Genghis Khan for a life in the wild. But they miss his kindness, and so they return. The prospect of being immortalized in a praise song was a powerful motivation for warriors on the battlefield. The Mongols used all manner of ingenious machines, from trebuchets to giant crossbows. They were masters of siege warfare and recruited Chinese military engineers to build their devices. In this copy of an 11th century Chinese manual, Justin Ma has discovered an unusual weapon.
This is a triple crossbow, a large triple crossbow in an arrangement where we have two bows in front, and here's the weird thing. You've got one bow in the back, facing backwards. There is a term in this passage which says that the bows are joined using a shengzhou, or a rope and axle, a pulley.
Okay, yeah. A pulley is the key, and that's the absolute essential ingredient in this contraption to make it work.
The front bows are joined by two simple cords. However, the rear bow is set facing backwards. The front two bows are strung and set to face forwards. The rear bow is then connected to the front bows by a single cord, running through two pulleys. This pulley system allows all three bows to thrust a projectile in the same direction.
Now these pulleys make sense. Sort of spanning around here, reversing the direction.
A winding mechanism, called a windlass, draws the string into place.
You can see that tension as it's pulling that last bow in reverse.
A crucial part of the design is the backwards-facing bow. This unique feature gives the machine a huge draw, making it capable of shooting massive darts.
There's a lot of tension in there.
The projectile strikes with impressive force.
Golly.
Well, it's gone through three.
Piercing 3 boards on the first attempt, the team decides to increase the challenge.
Let's do it. Quite exciting. Let's see if it really can punch a hole through that fourth one. It went all through 3 of them, and it punched a slight hole on the side of the 4th.
In battle, such weapons might be used to penetrate shields, but this heavy oak barrel poses an even greater challenge.
Aha, we got the hole. Look at it. A lot of leaking out. I didn't think we're gonna be able to punch this. I mean, it's just incredible.
This is impressive. I mean, this took a lot of force, too.
Look at the thickness of it. And this is some hard wood. I mean, this is not just some particle board here. Okay? I mean, this is incredible.
Embracing the knowledge and skills of the people they conquered enabled the Mongols to win wars and control vast territories. This was key to the creation of one of the world's largest empires. Heavy cavalry was an integral part of the Mongol army. By definition, they were fully armored. Heavy cavalrymen were troops who went into the thick of the fighting.
Mongol heavy cavalry had steel helmets, but they also had this very distinctive form of armor here, known as lamina, made of steel, rawhide, and even leather. Now, in this example, you can see how the individual scales have been laced together, often with doe skin. Rows of lamellae, which in turn was then sewn into fabric or leather backing. Lamina armor is wonderfully robust. It's flexible, relatively lightweight, and easy to repair.
The Mongol heavy cavalryman, in his characteristic lamellar armor, was the hammer in the Mongol war machine.
All Mongols, both heavy and light cavalry, were capable horse archers. However, for the heavy cavalry, shock troops that rode into and smashed the enemy, the bow was of secondary importance. Their principal weapon of first contact was the lance.
Using the momentum of the horse, the lance was mostly used point first, to strike and pierce a foe. It could be used with great precision. Strikes with the point were effective, but the Mongol lance had an additional feature.
Not only did you have the spearhead for running into and through the enemy, but you also had this hook to haul them from the saddle.
It took considerable strength to pull a man from his horse. And doing so took him out of the fighting just as successfully as a head-on strike.
In hand-to-hand combat, the Mongols used the sword to slice their way to victory. But they also had this, the great mace, which they used with 2 hands.
Mongol armies were famous for their ability to move fast and strike with surprise. But their heavy cavalry was a brutal shock force that could overwhelm and crush an enemy with raw power.